Today we're going to look at the dirty little secrets of dirty little secrets. In an attempt to be transparent, we're going to delve into the background of Jim Bock, the show's host.
Hi everybody, welcome to Dirty Little Secrets. My name is Kayla Bock, and I'm here with the host of the show, Jim Bock. Today, Jim will be the interviewed rather than the interviewer. The purpose of today's episode is to dive into Jim's past, discuss, his mission here, and what makes him sort of qualified to, pursue this podcast and the mission of the podcast. Jim, is there anything you'd like to say?
No, that's it. I'm a little nervous. I don't know what she's going to ask. I have a general idea, but she does know me better than anybody else on the planet. So let's see what happens. And I will be editing the video, but I'm going to be as transparent as I can be. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I never know what's going to slip out of my mouth. But let's give this a whirl and see what happens.
Okay, so let's dive right in with why. Why is this a podcast that you want to pursue?
I think that the world is not fair, and the vast majority of my life I've felt as though there were powers and forces in this world that were not equitable, didn't explain things, took advantage of other people. I felt victimized as a child, and it seems that there's been a lot of rules imposed on me and everybody else in the world with very little explanation, and many times made no sense whatsoever. I think, because of my childhood and, some abuse factors and maybe family dynamics, I've grown up not trusting, and I have a tendency to question authority figures and want explanations, and that has caused a lot of problems in school and with authority figures and everybody else my entire life. But I think there are some good aspects of that.
Okay. And let's just dive into as well, like what is the mission statement here of Dirty Little Secrets? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Is that what I just asked? No. I asked why.
Right. Well, now you're asking mission statement. I think if I had to sum it up, is really standing up for the underdog.
Okay. Right, as your tagline says. Can you get into sort of your background and history and what makes you feel like you're the one who has to pursue this?
I think there's a lot of people with the advent of individual journalism that are taking on this mission. I don't think I'm as brave as some other folks. But I think that I have some skills that might, help me see some things that other people are not pursuing. And I have a very weird and diverse background. I spent about 12 years on Wall Street. I ended up running a brokerage firm. I dealt with some sort of shady characters there. I worked in construction for, most of my childhood. I went to school to be a paralegal right after high school. When I started college, I did very well, and so I've been a paralegal for maybe 40-something years, but never practiced officially. I've filed a number of pro se lawsuits and appeals, and so I'm pretty good on my feet with the legal aspects of this world. I've written some private placement memorandums on Wall Street and contracts and all sorts of things. But I think that's very helpful. I've been a registered nurse for the past 19 years. I was an EMT for about 9 years. I ran an ad agency. I launched Hershey Foods' overall internet strategy. I did some other, big internet strategies in the early 2000s, at the beginning of the internet craze, and so I'm a quick study. I think that I have a passion for helping others as a necessity to living a fruitful life.
Okay. Let's go into your childhood. You said that as a child you felt often victimized and like other people's will was imposed upon you. Would you like to expand more on that?
Well, I think that I thought the world was a crazy place. I remember I was 4 years old, and I had already run into some problems in the neighborhood. I remember at 3, I had my first driving experience. I snuck out with my brother and his friends, went next door, and there was a post office, and the truck was unlocked, and I sat in the driver's seat, and I pulled it out of gear and ended up driving it through the side of the building. That was my first driving experience. It hasn't gotten much better. But I remember I was very excited to see my father. My parents were separated, and I go running over to the driveway. He's pulling in, and he was shit-faced drunk. And I slid down the hill next to the driveway, and he ran me over, front wheel, back wheel, and then got to the top of the driveway and denied it happened. And I was like, why would he deny it happened? What happened, and the neighbors came out. They threatened to call the cops if he didn't take me to the hospital. So he took me to the hospital, but of course he stopped at the bar on the way, and I'm sitting on the bar still bleeding, my legs mangled up, and I was like, what the hell is going on? Why is this happening like this? Why am I not at the doctor? And I just knew that the world was sort of a crazy place. And then shortly thereafter, one day he said, I have a surprise for you kids, me, my brother, my sister, and he drives us for about 45 minutes, maybe an hour. We stop at this building, and he speaks. We walk into this office, and he speaks to this guy behind the desk, and they're whispering, and he walks out of the room, and next thing you know, this lady's walking us over to this dormitory, me and my brother, and she goes, well, this is where you're going to live now. And I was like, what the fuck? Why? I felt like I couldn't trust anybody in this world. And we spent a couple years there, and some terrible things happened. But I felt from a very young age that this world was not trustworthy. Our caretakers were not trustworthy. The people that would watch out for us, didn't have our best interests at heart. That's how I felt as a child.
Okay, and if you don't mind me pushing it a little further, you say whatever horrible things happened there. Could you go more into what your experience was like in the orphanage? Or, I'm sorry, Christian home, however you want.
In all respects, it was an orphanage, but many of the kids there, parents were still alive, and a lot of them, in hindsight, were drunks. They're just drunk, irresponsible parents. And I'm not sure whether it would be better living with a drunk that would, not watch out for you or completely neglect you, or with a bunch of adults, some of whom would beat and molest you. I'm not sure, what would be worse. I was already having severe mishaps, living with my parents. My mom was, she got knocked up at 15 years old, and my father was 20 years older than her, and it was sort of a mismatch, and she could not handle being a mom, and she was out partying and just doing what she wanted to do, and they got separated, and he ended up getting custody somehow. I'm not sure. She was just tired of dealing with it. So we're living at the Fort Lee Christian Home for Children, and it was just really insane. It just on a regular basis, there were severe beatings. There were all sorts of crazy things happening there, and the sort of the inconsistency and the mind games and the distrust. I remember I'm going from first to second grade, and it's over the summer, and you're going from first to second grade. It's a big milestone for a little kid, and I remember the first day of second grade, and I'm very excited about this. Starting second grade, I'm telling all the other kids, I'm very stoked about this, and I get to school, and I'm looking at my paper, and I'm standing there, and next thing you know, the halls are empty, and I'm holding the paper, and I'm confused, and this woman goes over, and she goes, well, why aren't you in your classroom? And I go, I don't know what's going on. And she points, she goes, well, that's your classroom. She goes, why don't you just go in? I said, no, that's first grade. And she said, they didn't tell you stayed back? And my heart broke. It was just another devastation. It was another instance where I just felt as though I couldn't trust anybody. And from moving forward, I question every rule and every bit of guidance, throughout my life. And in some instances, it's paid off handsomely, and in many instances, it's caused me to feel like I couldn't fit in, I couldn't trust anybody. Paranoia. It's been a very strange life. So. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, okay. I think you did. So moving on from there, go ahead, keep going with life, sort of.
Okay, so a couple years later, my mom picks us up one night, and she remarried. We weren't invited to the wedding. We didn't know that she was remarrying. She remarried, and apparently the guy was, a bit more well balanced than my mother, because I guess he bought a house for us to live in, and at this point my father had custody, but was turned us over to the home, and she was allowed to see us on occasion, and picked us up for the weekend, and told us to bring some toys, which was unusual. We never brought toys, and she said, "Oh, make sure you bring extra clothes." And I was like, "Okay, whatever." And I didn't bring any extra clothes, and
there's that distrust of authority.
So we drive and we pull into this house, and it was 42 Roseland Avenue in Warren Township, New Jersey. And we pull in the driveway, and I remember the headlights in the front of the house, and she said, "Oh, this is where we're going to live now." And I started crying, and I was so happy that I thought my life was going to be different. I thought it was going to be better, and it was much better. My mom didn't change. I did have a new stepfather who was sort of a hero in many ways. He coached my little league team and did many things. But we were wild animals. My brother and I, we were wild. I mean, the whole neighborhood. We had no police force. If you call if neighbors called the cops on us for doing something crazy, it would take a half hour for the cops to get there. And at this point, we were long gone, and we were lighting fires. We were breaking everybody's houses. Things were very crazy. And so my mom stayed married for a little bit. This guy, Bill, he ends up getting leukemia. And it was very strange. I punched him one day, and it hurt him, actually. I was like, oh boy, we would wrestle around, and as kids do with male sort of figures in their life. And so I punched him, and it actually hurt. I was like, whoa, boy, I'm getting strong. I was like so excited. And he goes to the doctor a couple days later and find out that he's got leukemia, and he's dead shortly thereafter. And so I'm thinking I killed him. And I was like, oh, fuck, I'm not telling anybody. You get in a lot of trouble for killing people. And so I held on to that for a number of years, until, maybe 20 years. I didn't tell anybody I killed him, which obviously I didn't. But, for anybody maybe watching this that is thinking about sexual limitations, because I don't trust anybody. Anyhow, so we were kind of, my mom was, after that, she was running rampant. She's bar hopping, and she'd bring guys home, and they were shit-faced. There was people drunk all over the house all the fucking time. We would,
Were you able to stay in that home?
Yeah, we stayed there. My mom was pretty good with money. At this point, she had a couple houses. She ended up blackmailing my father. I don't know how she did that, but got that house. next thing you know, she owned 3 homes, and she got a job for the bank, worked at the bank for like 30, 40 years, got a pension. She did very well for herself. It was just sort of weird things that didn't happen. I never remember ever having a birthday party, until I had somebody give me a surprise birthday party, and I just freaked. It was like devastating. I was so emotional. It was just like brutal, and I didn't handle that very well. So anyhow, my mom remarries this guy who's got some money, and he's sort of a tough guy. I've seen him pull guns on people a number of times. He's a rough guy, and he had a lot of friends that were sort of apparently mobbed up. He wasn't mobbed up, but he he gambled, and he had an Italian guy, big guy, and big beard, and he's a tough guy. I never saw him back down to anybody, ever, and he was sort of like a role model. He was somebody I looked up to, and he coached football. And I didn't really want to play football, but he called me a pussy, and kind of dared me, and bullied me into it, and said I could quit Boy Scouts if I and I thought Boy Scout, was just like really, just pathetic. I was like, I don't want to do this. This is these are the kind of kids you steal the lunch money from. I didn't like Boy Scouts, but he said I could quit, and so I started playing football, and I had a lot of built up anger, and I did well, and so I played football for a long time, and I remember I got in high school, and I really hadn't talked to a girl yet. I was really pathetic as far as having a conversation. I didn't have meaningful friendships. I didn't have the skills to do that. I was like a solid D student. And I was just a misfit, and I don't know if it started when, we got out of home. My mom said, don't ever tell anybody you were there. Don't ever tell anybody what happened. And I never told anybody what happened. And it was funny because we had my name, our name on our underwear. When you have a couple hundred kids and living together, you would, I guess, write it with a Sharpie, their name on the back of their underwear. And so my underwear's sticking out of my pants, and everybody's like laughing at me. Why is your name on your underwear? And right away to fit in, we were putting tax on the teacher's chair, and doing just getting crazy, just being sort of a misfit, sort of derelict. Things we were doing in school you couldn't get away with now. What I mean? It was like we were picking on handicapped kids. It was just fucking atrocious. just terrible behavior. In the '60s, there was all sorts of racism in school, and all that. It was just a crazy fucking world back then.
Okay, so you get out of the home. Your mom becomes financially stable. If still a bit neglectful in other areas, let's say. You continue to go through school. You say you're a solid D student, and then right out of high school, you decide to become a paralegal, which sounds like...
Well, apparently I wasn't completely, like a complete fucking moron, just regardless of what my wife might tell you off camera. I remember I could not do basic multiplications. I could not memorize the table. I couldn't do any of it. I was so fucking stupid. I couldn't get through it. It was horrible. And then, we move on, and we start taking calculus, and somehow I'm in a calculus class getting A's. And it was the first time I ever did well at anything. I just could not believe it. And there was another instance where they didn't know what to do with me. They said, you're not, you have some talent. I was always like, you've got a lot of potential. And there was a consumer law class, and I remember I was a freshman in high school, and they said, well, you want to take this? You said you're interested in the law, and they didn't know it was mostly breaking the law. So I said, sure, I'll, whatever. I had no interest in anything, but I got an A. I got the highest grade in the course. It was a senior class, and I did well. And they were shocked. They didn't know what to do with me. And I remember shortly after that, I started drinking, and I drank, as often as I could, I remember, being able to talk to people. I remember not having to sound out conversations before I had them. I felt way more comfortable. It felt like my whole life I had a alcohol deficiency. And when I started drinking, it was like the best thing in the world. And I remember somebody handed me a Black Beauty in high school, and I didn't ask what it was. I just took it, and I talked to everybody in the school that day. I loved it. It was like everything they gave me, I took. I did not ask what anything was. I would, swallow it and maybe ask what it was later, and I did anything and everything I could for the next 10 years. And I kind of went through college as best I could during that period of time. 10 years going through college. It took me like 4 years to get an associate's degree.
But you did really well in paralegal school?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I actually, I was like just out of high school, and I signed up. My mom signed me up for Institute of Paralegal Studies in Linden. I was the youngest one to ever graduate, the highest grades they ever had, and I did quite well. And I seem to have a knack for that. It seems like if I'm interested, I can do quite well in anything in life. And I'm not smart, but I'm very obsessive. So I did quite well with that. And, I've been able to sort of teach myself some things over the years, like how to file a lawsuit, how to file an appeal, and do things like that, how to write, legal documents, and, sort of work from what other folks have done. And with the advent of the internet and, the ability to look at what was done before, it's pretty easy nowadays to do that sort of thing.
So if you were interested in it, you did well in it, what led you to not pursue a career?
Well, I was in college. I was going to Seton Hall at this point. I had transferred from the county college, and I took a finance course, which I loved. It was very interesting. And I found out that these guys on Wall Street were making a boatload of money, like way more than lawyers. And I found out that I would need to go to school for 3 more years in order to be an attorney. And in 1985, the average attorney was making $35,000 after 3 more years of college. And in 1985, the average stockbroker with no more college was making $65,000 a year. And I looked in the New York Times, and I saw an ad for a stockbroker. And I told my professor, my finance professor, I was going to go get a job on Wall Street. And he laughed at me. He said, basically that I was an idiot, and there's no way, because without a college degree, you're not going anywhere, kid. And so I got a suit, and I went for the interview, and they hired me on the spot. And they told me there was a Series 7 and Series 63 exam that I could take when I was ready. And there was one in 4 or 5 days, or there was one in 4 or 5 months. And I said, okay, I'll take the earlier one. And they said, you can't do it. There's no way. So I checked into the Murray Hill Inn in New Providence, and I ordered a lot of coffee, and I didn't sleep for 4 or 5 days. I took the exam, and I passed by 2 points. And, it probably helped a little bit that I had some finance course. So I got through it, and I got a job, on Wall Street, and it was one of these penny stock firms. It wasn't a real brokerage firm. It was a penny stock firm. And I started selling people, stocks, and I did quite well. But I was also drinking, and so I would get in a little bit of trouble, get jammed up. I was lying to people. I couldn't remember my lies when I was drinking so much. It was a sort of a shit show again, and I was always good at quitting jobs before I got fired. And I would, went for another interview, and they're about to fire me. I got hired by the other company, so before they could fire me, I got hired. And so I moved over, and then there's a new brokerage firm starting, and it became a big, giant, brokerage firm, and I got a job there, and did quite well, and ended up going to rehab in it was like 2 years later in 1987, the end of 1987. And then my world sort of got better in many ways and got worse in many ways. I quit smoking, and somebody told me this story about something happening to them as a child, and I started having flashbacks of being abused, and I didn't really remember any of the stuff, and I felt like I was going crazy. I could not shut off my mind, and I felt like I was making it up, trying to make attention for myself. And one of the other aspects of doing this Dirty Little Secrets podcast is that I like to help people in all areas, but we've got a hypnotherapist scheduled to do a podcast in a couple weeks, and who's going to take us through hypnotizing some people live, and and I think that the benefit of looking at that is that I think your mind is like a hard drive, and your eyes are like cameras, and everything you see and experience and hear in your lifetime is recorded to this hard drive. And I think you just need to figure out how to access this stuff, and not that you want to access it, but it feels like you need to defrag your hard drive in order to think appropriately. Just like when you have too much crap on your computer, if you don't defrag, if you don't take care of it and clean up all the junk files, you're not going to think right. You're not going to feel right. You're going to process things inappropriately. Where somebody says something to me and I take it out of context and I punch him in the face. You know what I mean? It's just not, it's not normal. It's like, happy birthday. What the fuck did you mean by that? It's not my fucking, it's like weird fucking responses when you don't appropriately process your feelings and emotions and thought processes. And hypnosis was very beneficial in helping me get through a lot of crazy stuff. So anyhow, I started remembering this stuff. I quit smoking, I quit sugar, and my life came unraveled. You know what I mean? I got married. Pregnant before marriage kind of situation, and and that lasted not too long, up and down with finances, and I went through a number of years, really 20 years of therapy and all sorts of other stuff, trying to get through and conquer my demons from things that happened to me as a child, and to process this stuff. All sorts of different types of therapies. The hypnosis was very beneficial, but there was some experiential and psychodrama, and men's group therapy, and all sorts of stuff that was very helpful in my life. And subsequently, I've introduced a lot of other people to that stuff in life. And in 1996, I started a charity called Survivors Foundation for Survivors of Child Abuse. And it was all about training therapists to recognize the symptoms and signs of somebody who had been abused. And at that point, the pendulum was, way over here, and today it's way over here, because nobody really believed that anything happened to anybody. And if it did happen to you, why are you bitching about it now? And people didn't realize how the serious repercussions of being abused and living with that, and how much that damages you over your lifetime if you don't appropriately process that information. So and so that that sort of unfolded. I got jammed up on Wall Street, of course, like every penny stockbroker does. And I had left Wall Street. I was doing a lot of intense therapy, and I was like, I don't want to live this lifestyle anymore. And it was like 2-3 years later, I'm out of Wall Street. It was like 3 years later, I'm out of Wall Street. I'm moving on with my life. And
what were you doing at that point?
I started the charity, the Survivors Foundation. I got a job for a friend of mine who was running an ad agency. She was running like sort of a mom and pop 7-person ad agency. Never made any money, and the best year they ever had was like $17,000 for the entire year. And that was it was like 17 years old, so this company wasn't really going anywhere. And she was the woman running it was having problems running it and looking for some help. She knew I was like a sales guy, wanted me to help drum up some business. And so I started, looking at it. And working on Wall Street gives you a unique set of skills to look at companies and to make some analysis based on what their competition is doing. So I was able to, make some recommendations. Hiring recommendations, training recommendations, got rid of some, characters there that weren't working out. And next thing you know, I'm pitching clients, and I land Hershey Foods out of the, sort of out of the blue. And, I've landed some big clients over the years, and it's mostly by pissing somebody off. They seem to be stuck in their ways, and I sent a letter to the president of the company, this big, of Hershey Foods, and all the brand managers were upset about it, and they called me in to sort of humiliate me. And I'm sitting in the this big boardroom of Hershey Foods, and they're like, "Oh, so what are you going to teach us?" I said, "I don't know what you're talking about. Why should we hire you?" I said, "My thought is, why would I want to work for you? Because you don't know what the hell you're doing." They're like, "What are you, crazy? You really don't know anything." And I said, "Well, why don't we just look at this little presentation I put together?" And I put together a little, presentation. I turn on this projector, and I show them their website. I said, "Well, this is your website," and it's loading, and it's loading, and it's loading, and it's loading, and everybody's getting upset. I said, "Well, this is what everybody's experiencing looking at your website. It sucks." Okay? And I said, "This is Mars chocolate. It goes right on. Click, boom, it's on." And it's like, "Oh, and this is Nestle's. Boom, right on." And it was like I showed them how how well organized their websites were. I did a little analysis, and they hired us to do a comprehensive analysis and focus studies around the country. And I launched 14 websites for Hershey Foods, and that was not knowing what the hell we were doing, because we were new at it, like everybody was new at it. And then I went after Force Labs, and they were launching Selects.com at that point. And I employed the same tactic. I sort of insulted their internet, activity and their website, and the guy calls me, a senior brand manager, and he said, "You're never going to work for this company." I said, "Well, maybe you're working there, but you're not going to last long if this is the best you could do." He goes, "What are you talking about?" So I ripped it apart. We talked on the phone for like half hour. I destroyed what his whole entire internet presence. He said, "Well, why don't you come in and talk to me?" And I went in, and I was shitting bricks. I was so nervous. I'm looking at the board, like the lobby, they had like a $500,000 lobby, it was so beautiful, the finest woods, wood you could ever imagine, these, oriental carpet. It was just a beautiful sort of situation, just walking into, but I was nervous, and I was talking to this friend of mine, and he said, "No, just tell them the truth, just think of over the years of all the people that you hired that were unqualified, and you didn't know it, and just think of all the people you passed on that were qualified." He said, "Nobody knows. They roll the dice, they take a chance," and he hired me, and in essence, I guess they paid us, maybe $1.5 million for a $25,000 website, and so it was a good deal for us, and went on and did a bunch of other projects, and
okay, so you get off Wall Street, you move into ad agencies, and then you just decide, "I'm going to be an EMT."
no, I'm driving on, I meet this guy, right, and what happens is I'm doing well, things are coming together. But it's all about money. My life's still about money. I'm not on Wall Street anymore, but I'm thinking if I could just get, strike it rich, it's going to be, things are going to, do well.
Well, now at this point, like on Wall Street, you were relatively successful, or?
I was doing pretty good. I had my ups and downs, through drinking, but in the over-the-counter markets, there's a lot of shady guys, and I was doing well, though. I was holding my own. I was doing quite well. I knew I wasn't helping anybody. What happened was I'm on Wall Street. I get married again, and what happens is we're 2 weeks married, and she wants a divorce, and it was just fucking devastating. Again, I'm like, fucked up, man. I can't believe my life is crapping out again. And I meet this guy, and he was like the happiest guy you ever met. Over my lifetime, I've always looked for mentors and guys that were strong, smart, well-to-do people that seemed to have things figured out. And I would buddy up with these guys, and this guy's name was Tom Flynn. He was really the happiest person in the world that I've ever met. And one thing leads to another. I started talking to him, and he said to me, he goes, "How do you know if your life's successful?" And I thought about it. I think first thought is, well, money. I'm like, no, that's never worked. Married? No, I've done that. Didn't work. Kids? No, that didn't work. Power? No, that didn't work. I said, I have no idea. He said, well, you're shooting in the dark. Your life is going nowhere. You have no direction. You have no idea what life is all about. And I guess I said, uncle. And, I was like, fuck. He goes, what? Let me tell you what I do. He goes, what I imagine is there's a scale. On one side, it's all the people that I've helped in this world. On the other side, it's all the people that I've hurt. He said, I imagine from birth till death that I would like to see that scale show that I have helped more people than I've hurt. And that is the gauge of whether or not my life is successful. Because if I've helped more people than I've hurt, there's no dispute. If that's what my life is all about, helping people, undoubtedly be successful. What I've tried to do since then is I've tried to live that model, and not out of any goodness of character. I remember somebody told me a story one time, and this guy's living like a sort of righteous life. He goes, someone goes, hey, I see you saw the light. He goes, nope, felt the heat. and that's sort of the story of my life. I don't do anything because I have an epiphany of wonderment. It's really because my life has become so incredibly painful, living the life of a taker instead of the life of a giver, where I inflicted damage on so many people's lives that life wasn't worth living. Where I was fairly well off. I felt like driving my car into a cement truck. And what I sort of left out right before this was I was off Wall Street for a little bit, and the New York District Attorney's Office contacted me, and they accused me of numerous felonies when I worked on Wall Street, and market manipulation, stock fraud, bribery, and I was like, what the fuck? What are you talking about? And I hung up and I thought about it for about half hour, and it dawned on me that everything they had told me was correct, and I had done those things. I didn't even realize that's those were the things that I was doing. And and then I met this guy Tom, and sort of tried to develop a new way of living, because I was convinced I was going to go to prison, and that I was going to it was, for me, it was like going back to the Fort Lee Christian Home for Children. That unspeakable things were going to happen to me again, and I was going to kill somebody or kill myself, and I had no way of living, and so I developed a way of living in it, and it's really been by helping people, and I saw a terrible accident on Route 95, and the guy's laying on the street, got thrown through the windshield of a truck, and he's bleeding to death, and I had no skills to help whatsoever. And the next day, I drive by the Summit Volunteer First Aid Squad, and they hung up a 30-foot banner. It said, "Volunteers wanted," and I was like, "Oh my God, heard me!" And I went in, I volunteered for a while, and I found out that banner had been hanging there for 25 years. So I drove by it every day. I never saw it, and I never wanted to see it. And I became an EMT for a number of years, maybe 9 years. I got sort of addicted to the action. I love it. I felt like I was very competent, very quick-paced decision-making, much like trading stocks on Wall Street. And I went to nursing school. I became a ER nurse at University Hospital in Newark, and later at Newton Memorial Hospital in Newton.
Well, hold on, let me ask a clarifying question there. So, district attorney accused you of this, you're looking at jail time. How does that resolve?
Well, what happens is I'd start helping people, and I had probably 100 letters of people telling me that I've helped save their lives. I was taking people off the street.
Like character reference letters?
Yes, yeah, and then another friend of mine that had helped me over the years saw like a change in character, and he was an attorney, and he also wrote me a letter, like 99 other people had, and I'm not sure if it's because his daughter was engaged to the judge's son, which I didn't know anything about. But I just look at it as another example where this power, some people call it God, took care of situations. I don't necessarily believe that I'm going to pray and God's going to come and take care of me. I do believe there's some power that I choose to call God, that so long as I align my actions with this power's will, that I have nothing to worry about. And I believe that he'll solve all my problems. And it's not necessarily going to be how I want my problem solved, but certainly, when I get really down to the basics of just helping somebody else and putting their needs in front of my wants, I have no problems. I seem to be locked up at many times in my life in fear, and self-centered fear, where I'm desperately selfish and struggling to get my wants met, to build up my pride and ego, to magically improve my status in life, as though that's going to make me happy, but it never has before.
So how did it resolve that?
I got probation.
Okay. You were convicted of a felony?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So then how did you become a nurse?
Well, the nursing board looked at it. The judge, during sentencing, apparently, didn't give me any restitution and really took it easy on me, and they let me off probation early, and when I was an EMT, I wasn't supposed to be an EMT either because I was a felony, but New Jersey was handling it, the EMT registration, and for like 1 year, they switched it over to the National Registry. And during that period, I guess it was okay through the National Registry to be a felon, and I made it during that year, and then they switched back to the state handling it, and they were stuck with me. And it was much like when I got a job at University Hospital in New York, and it was a tremendous opportunity. The woman running the emergency department said, "You'll never work here." She didn't like me, and what happened was, magically, right before graduation, she got fired, and they hired this guy, and I went for one interview, and there was 200 applicants, and he hired me on the spot. And then he got fired, and he rehired the other woman, and she was stuck with me. I don't know how this shit works out, but that seems to be the story of when I'm trying to help people.
That's crazy.
God takes care of all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really great. Those are situations you couldn't orchestrate. Nobody in the world could orchestrate something like that. That's wild. Okay, so you changed your whole code of living, and that brings you to today. What has anything, well, I'm saying this like I don't know, like I'm not married to you. Why don't you get into some more recent events that also played a part in you deciding to do something like this?
Okay, we were living in North Jersey, in Mountainside, New Jersey, and I don't know if you Google Mountainside, New Jersey, and dildo, you'll see that the Mountainside Police Department was plagued with all sorts of drama. And in the midst of that drama, right in the midst of it, I had an old landlord who was sort of mobbed up, who ended up threatening our lives because we moved out of his house. And I had done $35,000 worth of improvements. Kayla and I were living there, and
on a month-to-month lease.
Yeah, month to month, and for about I was there for about 6 years, and Kayla moved in a few years later, and what happened was this guy goes crazy and starts threatening my life. He threatened to stab Kayla in her pregnant stomach. All sorts of shit happened, and the police don't do anything. Apparently, this guy was a cooperative informant for the police department, and his brother was in the New York Post as a cooperative informant for the FBI, and so they were twin brothers, and one thing led to to another, which was another strange story, because both these guys, were sort of out to get me, and the cops wouldn't do anything about it. I filed a lawsuit against the cops. We settled that. They sort of paid me off for that, and after not doing anything, refusing to do anything. It took about a year to get anybody's attention. He got arrested for 4 felonies, and one thing led to another, and he got lifelong restraining order, which didn't mean that he wasn't going to come get me one day and do something. But I don't know exactly what happened, but this motherfucker, died. He fucking overdosed and died, and his tough brother, who was his twin brother, was out to sort of get me as well, and he died of cancer, and it was like a very quick settling, and I don't, I'm not saying God's taking care of my problems, but he seems to be fucking doing a good job of it. Because a number of times I thought I should do something and step up my game because I'm a pussy, I'm not doing anything, and thank God I didn't. Thank God that God took out the trash. So that was an interesting sort of set of, circumstances, but I know that there's many people in this world and that are getting screwed over by political interests or organizations or.
I mean, even in that scenario, we were not the only people that he did that to.
Oh yeah, there were half a dozen other families that this guy had terrorized.
And nobody did anything about it.
Yeah, nobody did anything about it
Until us.
So yeah, and it took a year of this guy threatening us, even after we left. And the guy was he was convicted of stalking, and it's not like a real easy thing to get somebody on apparently. But the guy was he was the epitome of true evil, and anyhow, so that sort of is behind us for the most part. We have a lawsuit going against the heir of his estate, and however that works out, it works out. And I've been involved in managing a medical practice for the last 15 years. I do that to earn a living. I'm not certainly wealthy by any stretch of imagination. I have 4 kids. My daughter's a NICU nurse, doing very well. She's about to get her doctorate in maybe 6 months or so, and about to get married. And I have a little boy, 12 years old. He does travel soccer. He's a great A student, very smart in many respects, and very sort of inexperienced in other senses.
Naive, perhaps.
Lack of sort of common sense. We got to remind him to look both ways when we cross the street. You know what I mean? And then I have a 6-year-old who is my spitting image with every characteristic bad characteristic that I have, and twice as tough as anybody I've ever met, and 3 times smarter than anybody I've ever met, who's fucking evil genius, and I'm talking to him like yesterday, and I'm saying, you can't do that. I'm gonna put you on timeout. And he stands in the hallway. He looks at me. He smiles and he gives me the finger. At 6 years old, I don't know what the hell to do about that. And then I have a little boy who's 4 years old, Jameson, and he is cat's meow. He's the most precious human being on this planet, and I can't even talk about him without crying because he is so beautiful. He's so perfect. Not that I would tell you that at 4 a.m. when he kicks you in the face, okay, or he fights you like you're trying to pull a limb off when you try to cut his nails, so he gets these
Or brush his teeth.
But he's very territorial. He's autistic. He's nonverbal. Although he did start, he was doing the ABCs with his mom yesterday, the day before. He's going, she goes, A, she's saying A's for apple, and apple, and he goes, apple, and then she goes, B for baby, and he goes, C for cat, and he goes, cat, and he goes, and he loves elephants. So they get up to E, and he goes, and it was like, oh my God, she was telling me about it. I didn't even hear it, but I was so sad I missed it. Anyway, he's an angel, and the kindest, nicest person on this planet. So he's just starting school. Jackson's just starting school. He's a 6-year-old. Jimmy is in 6th grade and doing great in soccer, and everything's good. I mean, I think my life is I've got a beautiful wife who thinks I'm an idiot 99% of the time. Yeah, that's not necessary. Yeah, well, she doesn't like when I talk. But she's always right. I hate to admit that. I hate to admit that in public, but she thinks that I should not say anything when I have brilliant ideas, and that I should just stop and think about it for maybe a couple of days. But I always open my mouth, and whatever happens. But
not to cut you off, but there is one more subject I want to get to in our limited amount of time, 12 minutes. Can you talk about, you mentioned you're a patient advocate. How did you get into that? What does that look like for you? And is that another sort of piece of this, podcast puzzle for you?
Well, yeah, of course. I was in the hospital and I couldn't breathe, and nobody would listen to me, and it was just yet another situation in life where I was devastated, and I seriously could not breathe, and I'm panicking. I don't know if you know what it feels like to not be able to breathe, as though somebody is suffocating you, and sort of just panicking. And the nurse tells me, "Oh, your breathing's fine. You're just panicking." I'm like, "Of course I'm panicking. I can't fucking breathe." And so I Googled patient advocate, and gave this lady $1,000 over the phone, credit card, and she comes over to the hospital, and I got the treatment I needed, and I was okay, and that sort of planted the seed. And I'm a registered nurse the last 19 years, and I've seen a lot of horror stories. I saw a situation where I was a triage nurse in the ER, and a sick baby comes in, a 2-month-old baby who's lethargic, a lot of mucus coming out of her mouth. You could tell that she was very sick and should be in the ICU. And she comes in, and I don't even do vitals. I just take her in the back. I call the pediatrics. Pediatrician comes down, and I say this kid needs to be in Morristown because there's no intensive care unit at Newton Memorial, and they ignored me, and one thing led to another, and I said, just call a helicopter, get this kid there because this is an emergency. And so they sucked the kid's nasal passages out, and the kid improved for a brief time, which is going to happen if you just suck the mucus out. But the kid had RSV, and it was pretty obvious that the kid was going to not do well. And this sort of pediatrician hospitalist ignored me, and the kid died. Noon the next day, and I just felt devastated. And I got involved with helping form a union there, and get involved a little bit like that. And I don't know what to do. When there's just tremendous situations where somebody's getting screwed over, and people are not paying attention, whether it's because of pride or finances, or just being kind of big shot. I guess that would be pride, but I feel like you have to do something regardless of the consequences to it. Not that I want to be the target for everybody in the world who's that I might piss off. But I guess I just think I should pick my fights. Dirty Little Secrets, sort of limited to sort of looking at situations that are going on in society that somebody ought to look at. And it could be, I guess, good situations maybe, but doesn't really match the Dirty Little Secrets. But there are situations. Our first episode was last week, and that was on Richard West was the attorney that I interviewed, and he's a good guy. And if you get an opportunity, you might want to check out that episode if you know a doctor, dentist, anybody who's licensed. It could be an architect, because once you're licensed by a licensing board, the state has sort of a pound of flesh, whether you like it or not. There's a duty to cooperate, and that might cause some issues if somebody's coming after you. And if you don't want to get in a situation where you're tricked into saying something that you didn't mean to say. So, anyhow, anything else?
I don't think, I mean, you're a patient advocate today, started that business. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I've only had a few patients that I've represented, and one of them, I guess, would be the sort of the most notable is that this mom was giving a hospital, some flack. Her kid was in the hospital. She was a year old, and she'd been in the hospital for a year on feeding tubes, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. So she went from Washington or Seattle Children's Hospital to another hospital in this area, and noticed that the health care that her child was receiving was subpar. There was obviously a nursing shortage over since COVID, and some thin staffing, and some of the techs were commenting on how the nurses didn't know what the hell they were doing. They weren't trained. She was finding all sorts of medical devices like syringes in the infant's bed, and wet diapers, and inappropriately documented charts and things that were of concern to her, which might not have been a concern necessarily to the child's welfare completely, maybe a little bit, but she had some concerns, and once she verbalized those, I don't know if it's a thing that's going on in healthcare, but if you're up against a pediatrician and you have any concerns about how they're treating your child, and you verbalize it, and sort of insinuate malpractice, you better be careful, because chances are they can report you to Child Protective Services, who will launch an investigation, basically unfounded, because they have immunity. Healthcare providers have immunity. They can report you, and for something that may or may not be true, or can be slightly exaggerated, and your life is over. Your life is over, because if your child's sick or not doing well, and they have any suspicion that's fueled by a healthcare provider, whether it's true or not, maybe the doctor can't figure out what the hell's going on, or maybe the doctor made a mistake, and the attention's deflected towards you, away from the healthcare providers. Chances are they're going to put you under a microscope and make your life miserable, and launch an investigation and charge you. This woman ended up being found not guilty, and we'll see what happens from here. But there's situations like that that just upset me, and sort of make me want to stand up for the underdog.
All right. Well, I think we are going to end it there. Thank you, Jim, for being so forthcoming, for sharing so much with us. I really do appreciate it, and for letting me be the one to interview you. I appreciate that a lot. And yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for watching the second episode of Dirty Little Secrets, and we'll have some more episodes coming soon. There are several in the pipeline, and that's it. Thank you.